IO is the company that I work for. We're a web development product development company. We specialize in building products, but mainly for startups. And yeah, my team, I fall back on them to do designs and help out with the Zapped community. Then I also have to then give a shout out to Skulk, Fenter, and Justin Slack. Always there to help manage the community. If anyone here isn't on Zapped, our Zapped Slack community, I'll post a link in the chat. We're building a South African product design community over there, and we've got I've stopped checking, but it's somewhere between 400 and 500 members, and we're trying to grow that community so that we can all learn from each other, support each other, chat about topics, share ideas, get insights, and so on. Yeah, that's it.
And for this, I thank you. If I could give you a crown, I would. It's a fantastic community, and I'm happy to be there. And thanks for this opportunity as well. Guys, as soon as I start sharing, I'm going to switch off my camera because I'm going to look at my second screen, and I think there's nothing less weird than looking at someone speaking to you like this. So thanks for all the guys who switch on the cameras. I mentioned this a few times today, actually, that there is something really intimidating about speaking into a void, especially if you rely heavy on your own silly sense of humor, and there's no feedback, and you don't know if something has landed or if something is absolutely just completely the wrong audience. If so, there's no turning back now. I've made a few slides and they are going to come through your screen. There's not much I can do about that anymore. So here goes. Let me quickly share. And then switch off my face. I prefer the blue hair anyway. So yeah, so I'm assuming everyone can see my Figma, and there's a little bit of a cover image there. The reason why I've started here is for the people who are already on Figma. If you go to the community section and you search for Inge, and you go to creators, you'll find me. Ooh, don't press spacebar, that would happen to you as well. You'll find tonight's presentation on here, and if there's any links or things or stuff that I say that you would like to go back to and have a look-see at again, you're more than welcome to go and find it. We can also share a link, and if I do not say any filthy words, and there's a video of this afterwards, I would also then add the video to this specific Figma file so that you guys can listen to my voice again if you really have to. Cool, so let's move to my massive presentation deck, which is like 2 words a slide. Don't stress, guys. I should have pre-opened this most probably, you know, now that the internet is thinking. So yeah, look, it's called Intro to Figma and Design Systems. This is my safeguard. If I say stupid things or things that you already know, there's your warning. You can leave early. But yes, I'm definitely going to cover things from the starting point. I'm also going to rehash some of the things that Liesel mentioned a little bit earlier about me, because, you know, if someone's busy, someone unknown to everyone else is busy yapping about something so passionately, you might want to know who they are. So I'm Inge. I usually have a whole lot of different colors hair, but, you know, with Corona, my hairdresser's actually gotten infected and I can't actually look after the do, so now it's just blonde and in the air. So yeah, I'm a freelancer. As you guys have heard, I create products, but since when? There's a little bit of a spoiler earlier, forever. So, you know, I know the amount of years don't really make the designer, but, you know, guys, someone designing for 17 years surely shows a large amount of resilience and street cred, because you guys know it's rough out there. So why would anyone do this for this long? because I love solving problems. And people say that, but I truly, this is one of my Maslow's triangle of happiness pieces. Like, if there's not problems, if things are easy, I'm bored. I don't like being bored. I'm so into problems. I started studying this year again. So that shows the dedication to problems. Also, it's in my blood. My dad's an illustrator, designer, sculptor, and art director. So, you know, I grew up playing with all of these physical toys like modeling clay and expensive coloring pencils and old school letter set, real Mad Men vibes, but hopefully without all the interesting loose women. I didn't see them, promise. So yeah, gaming and tech was always welcomed into our home. And as soon as it became available, it was literally there. And I grew up during the most amazing era. The digital tools were being developed right next to us, and the internet happened, and, you know, all kinds of connections with people that you never met before, and you had contact to information. We thought that would solve problems, but, you know, sometimes it creates a little bit more. And with all of this, I started questioning everything. So as a second generation designer growing up on the cusp of a digital revolution, I was exposed to so many things that stimulated my love for problem solving and innovation. Like, it was really, like, without sounding too dramatic, like everything up until this point, I don't think I really had a choice. So what have I worked in? I'm really going to skip over this really quickly. It's going to be like, well, if my internet allows. I've worked in fashion. That's very strange, but, you know, that happened. Worked in commerce, media production and TV production, software as a service, tech startups, prop tech, and recently a large telco. And those are the ones very much on, like, top of mind. But I'm not finicky about industries. I really, like, if someone asks me, what is your favorite brand or industry that you've worked on? I honestly do not have a favorite. I like making things easier and automating things, and you know, it doesn't matter if it's golfing, which I assume people would mostly assume is the most boring thing to work on, but it's not. Like, you know, those people have problems too. You wouldn't think it. They're walking around on, you know, green pastures with chasing a ball. That's the problem. That's the first problem. So, intro to design systems. Hey, nice design system. Yeah, said no one. Ever. No one really ever says that. So people usually think it's like a brand guide, like, because the word design is in there. And guys, I want to say that there are literally thousands of talks and books and podcasts and things about design systems, and they all kind of start the same. They rip apart the words because it says design system, and then, you know, the lie starts right there. But no, it's not just a brand guide. It's more. I'm gonna try my best to make this not the same as everything else out there. I'm gonna put my spin on it. So design system explains a technical level that, you know, like the technical level explains that it's a set of principles and procedures according to which something is done, which is cute and it's nice and everything, but it's almost, to me personally, better when people call it a design language system, because then it only starts touching on the collaboration and the communication and the engagement that is involved within a design system. So obviously, need a little quote ski, can't have a slide deck without quotes. So it's a set of rules or guidelines that heightens the level of harmony in a digital ecosystem. And whenever you see this, you can later go and click on the link. So still not quite sure. So Ala Kolmatova, if I've butchered your name, I am very sorry. I do worship your design systems book, but a design system is a set of interconnected patterns and shared practices coherently organized to serve the purpose of a digital product. And that serving bit is the bit that everyone who's involved gets some trouble understanding, because everyone really wants their bit to work really well and sometimes forget it's not about them. So when she mentions coherently organized to serve the purpose of a digital product, the Dark Lord Sauron springs to mind. And guys, if you do not know what Lord of the Rings is, I am sorry, because it only starts now. What does Sauron and a product have in common? Come on. domination. So look, this might seem dramatic, but product wants to dominate just as much as Sauron. Sauron noticed how even the great power of 19 rings on their own, no one really dominated. It was a free-for-all with useless quarrels. So he came up with a scheme to combine all assets across all platforms into a singular item. Guys, I've hit the next button miles ago. Come on. There we go. One reel. I'm going to do my best Galadriel. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. So one does not simply dominate without a single source of truth. This Lord of the Rings anti-hero analogy was pretty handy up until now. And then this came up. So, you know, all the designers wants to be elves, and then all the developers are like, no, 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 you can't be the elves. And then the designers say, no, but wait, you can be the dwarves. And then the designers go like, actually, you know what? We are the humans. We are still serving Sauron, even as Nazgul, after death. And then this whole combination turned into a nightmare. And, you know, marketing showed up, and even Gandalf rocked up. So no, let's skip to the good part. We spoke about domination, and you can see how companies and products with good design language systems dominate. They're efficient, their whole design to production process is faster, and they have better cross-department collaboration. Well, it looks like that from the outside, and that's wishful thinking, but it looks like that. It feels like they have better collaboration when they have a design system. Their brand is consistent because they have one single source of truth. And on paper, guys, that is exactly what it's supposed to do. So what would one find in a design system if it's not just a pretty CI guide? Well, the short answer is different things. Not one of them are the same. And yes, we know yellow is not an accessible color, but I'm sure you'd like to know a little bit more. So I think one of the things that Airbnb did as a case study did really well was to include their whole team in the discovery phase. So at the end, I'll share a link that Justin Slack shared a while ago on Zapped, but it's a survey that they did to kind of measure how well design systems are functioning in companies. And one of the things that really stood out to me during that article was that people they're really battling with adoption. So getting people involved from your very first discovery phase is I believe, one of the things that assists in getting people to adopt a whole design system. So they decided to do a rebrand while they were experiencing exponential growth, and scaling without systems usually means trouble. But they figured out how to recognize the challenges, and they've leveraged their collective effort. I have no idea. From the outside, that looks like a very good case study on how to rebrand, reinvent yourself, and introduce the beginnings of a design system. Most probably people who were on the other side of the wall might have one or two things to say about that. But yeah, perhaps it's worth talking you guys through some of the things that you might see when viewing a company's design language system. So this is something that starts off early, and it's something that, you know, it's something that people don't really talk about, but having your brand as part of your initial design system does help with the adoption from the marketing side. So similar to a brand guide, you need to capture your company's mission, personality, promise, and values. Another similarity is the visual language. Sorry, 2 seconds. Yeah, there we go. My child just brought me food. Sorry, guys. Anywho, I am a human. I am someone's mother. Anywho, so another similarity is the visual language. You need the foundations that makes your brand recognizable and engaging. This usually includes logos, colors, iconography type. Guys, if you know anything about a normal CI guide, those are just the beginning, just the thought points that you could mention in a workshop as soon as you start talking to all of the parties involved when you start thinking about a design system. Content. So, you know, voice, tone, vocabulary, grammar, style. And then patterns. Patterns are reusable design system blocks, so whether for UI, which would be like combinations and components, or for UX, certain journey patterns. And I haven't mentioned development patterns and language patterns because that's not necessarily my strong point, but those are definitely worth mentioning. All of those help to achieve goals and ensure user experience consistency. Actually, consistency is the main key. Everything needs to be deliberate. toolkits. Sharing is caring. Sharing plugins, colors, fonts, grids, etc. with third-party vendors is something I honestly believe in. I know it's not, you know, everyone's favorite part of a design system is sharing it with other people because they are worried that it would be butchered, but it's very much a test to see, you know, if people can create products in line with your design system when you let it out there and loose. So yeah, I'm going to talk about stuff about Figma, and you know, what I really want to highlight is most of these feelings are personal, but I did say, why do I like Figma so damn much? So the short answer is I severely dislike doing things the hard way. I am not into doing the same thing 50 times. It's just not my nature it's insanity. So this is very, again, T's and C's. This is very much a personal preference. I've been smitten with Figma for about 3 years now. So I could have missed a thing or two, like an important update on collaboration or a new release somewhere with one of the other programs. But the last time I checked, some of these solutions cause a massive amount of tool switching fatigue. And, you know, I'm not saying you need all of this, but this is something I want to touch on a little bit later. But onboarding, when people are using 50 different plugins and programs and things for new people is absolutely nightmarish, and craft never wants to work, and it's I'm sorry. So Sketch is a native app for Mac OS users. Have they changed this? Anyone? Are they still native to Mac? Like, I can't believe that you can collaborate with people. Are they still
native to Mac? Yeah.
Why on earth would you want to separate your designers from the rest of the world? Come on. So that's one of the main reasons, like onboarding. No, I can't. And I can't only be catering for people who have Macs. So that's one of the main reasons I'm absolutely smitten with Figma, because, you know, anyone with internet. Yeah. So XD has a separate file. Guys, you all know these differences. Like, the list is quite long. But if I now make a comment on someone's XD design file, I now have to go and merge it, and ain't nobody got time. So why? No, software solutions will never fix problems that are caused by people. But if we are trying to build something with better collaboration between elves, dwarves, and men, kumbaya, I choose life. I choose something that is accessible by all, with internet, obviously. So can you show us something? Yeah, and we'll get to that part. I just made pretty slides and we have to get through all of them. So straight after this prezo, I'm going to chuck a few things together in Figma and chat about them whilst chuckling and chucking. And it won't be pretty because, you know, time. But yeah, as I said early on, we are going to definitely make a few things. So I've added this, and this is very much something, this is the part where I think you might want to come back to the slides later, because, you know, people usually ask, you know, do you have some books or things we can read or whatever? And there are a few links that I can share. So yeah, let's start with books. I'm not going to do the Brad Frost first because, you know, he's the oldest and he can get in line. But I found this is a very easy book by Andrew. I'm going to mess up his name. I want to say Goodwell. He's pretty much a guide to creating and documenting and maintaining design systems. It's very much, you don't have to be a designer or anyone involved with design systems to understand what this guy is saying. He's not using difficult language or anything strange. And then I mentioned Ala Komotova earlier. I've been reading this on my phone because my iPad broke, and I've been waiting for the hard copy for 3 months now. I hope it's coming. I hope it didn't. Oh, you've got it, Scott. Did you get my copy? That's not nice. So sorry, guys, I got distracted. But yes, this is also a very cool book that, you know, empowers teams to create digital products. So Design Twitter is a heavenly place for lively discussion on Figma and new releases and design systems and all kinds of stuff. If you're not on the Design Twitter, you are most probably, I don't know, grooming a community of people and you have no time. So I've added some of my favorite peeps. I could only list like 4 of them, but I've added Raji, Raji works for Figma. He's a design advocate. He is an entertaining human, and you can see him in Config, which is their yearly or quarterly conference. I don't know how often they do it. I make sure I'm there because they release the coolest stuff. But I started following him because he's got short and sweet tips on Figma. And whenever there's a new release or something, he does a cute little GIF on how to use it. And it's very user-friendly. Anya is a local Figma and design system ninja. She is a human and a mother, and she deals with real life crises while solving massive design problems for too many people. I don't know when she sleeps, but yeah, she's a colorful human, and she's definitely a very, very inspirational one at that. Joey Banks, I think he used to work at Figma, but now he works at Twitter. But he is a design systems dude that also shares tips and tricks, but he's very non-biased because obviously he doesn't work for the place. So if stuff goes wrong, he's the first to say something about that, which I also enjoy. And Miggy used to be a professor, but I think he's now also an educator and an advocate at Figma. So also talks about cool tips and tricks on design systems and how to use Figma. So again, I've added little link skis on the presentation. So if I had to listen to something, this guy in 2014, this guy introduced me to podcasts. I mean, it was there before, but this guy, he had the most amazing podcast on vexology. Who knew I would love flags? So the only reason why I think this guy is absolutely godlike is, one, his production is amazing with his podcasts and his editing is great, but he also looks at everyday things and he introduces design to people that make you excited again. He has, the way that he looks at stuff is, it just flutters, butterflies, everything. You want to listen to a cool podcast that doesn't make you feel like you're learning about, old school, same stuff, different day. Definitely any of the 99PI podcasts are amazing. So I've added some generally cool things. And as I mentioned earlier, the design systems survey if you haven't read this is actually quite interesting. It's got nothing to do with intro to design or design systems or Figma, but it is so interesting because there's as many problems as a design system solves. It sometimes creates so much heartache and passion and disagreement. So, and getting a feel for how people are dealing with that through this survey is actually quite interesting. So I started at the bottom. Now we're here. I started at the bottom because I mentioned it previously, but let me start at the top. So obviously you guys must have been to Medium. There's a whole bunch of cool articles. I've actually highlighted one because, guys, for anyone who's not here for intro, for anyone who has most probably started a design system at a large organization, or for anyone who has migrated or rebranded or done something over a multitude of platforms, there's a series of articles on Medium of how people solved a few problems that was quite inspiring. It gave me hope. So go have a look-see. Figma, the reason why I said previously, I highlighted Teams and Google Meet and Zoom and all of that things. In their previous conference, they announced audio chat at its next level for creating things together with teams. You don't have to have 5 different things open. They're still beta testing the audio chat, but I can only imagine if you're busy in a design program having a review with someone remotely and they are on a call and they can make notes and they can add comments and the collaboration would be as close to the real thing as in real life, I think, as it could be digitally, except obviously if we start using artificial. Let's stop there. I'm going to go on a tangent. So I've added IBM's design philosophy because there's one thing specifically they talk about recognizable designs, that people always ask things about using. I'm going to get to that, but there's a reason why I've added this here, and I'll get back to it. So UX PIN has a good definition on what constitutes a design language. And then, there's a cool article that I found on ZA Tech, actually. Someone shared it about design tokens and that they're kind of, you know, trying to create a uniform language. That's also quite handy too. I think it's a good place to start. If you know nothing, learn about the right things in the beginning. So popular design systems, obviously this has to be in every little talk about design systems. Reference, guys, if all else fails, if you are never going to create your own design system, or if, you know, you are, if nothing ever comes of this little talk, go and get some inspiration from people who have tried to accomplish this. Some have succeeded significantly better than others. And you know, just get an idea of how other people are doing this. There's a reason why they have failed 5 billion times, and there's a reason why they've gotten it right, because they stood up and they failed fast. So, just in case there's a few dev guys in here, I put a few words up there for you: React and Angular, Vue, Drupal, Django, Group. No, it's a trap. It's not about this at all. So by no means, I'm not a dev. So I like knowing what tech people use to develop products or front end. So I like reading about things, but I cannot give you a good opinion about what is the right platform or the right tool to use for anything. So I'm not even gonna, you can ask me afterwards, what do I prefer? No, I'm just gonna say, I don't know. So yeah, look, most of us don't have the luxury to pick anyway. And I said insert ancient custom legacy platform here, because that's going to happen. You're going to create a very nice design system and someone's going to say, yeah, but what about this weird tool that no one knows what it was written in? Can we make it look like the rest of our stuff? So yeah, it does. I'm not even going to go down that tangent. So, but I do, however, get asked about material design. And this is what I mentioned previously about making yourself unique and identifiable. So people usually ask me, so how do you feel about material design? So here's, again, I feel like reiterating something. Like personally, I love that someone created a flexible ecosystem that is well documented and tested. I think, you know, most people are worried that their brand will get lost in something like this. But perhaps I should rephrase and say designers could perhaps feel that their brand could get lost if in something like this, because that is the first thing, is my stuff is going to look like them, or my stuff is going to work like theirs. I want people to know that they are in using my brand, etc., etc. And they're very scared of looking at other people's work. And, you know, that is up to them, because if you feel like your brand should be an immersive full experience from pixel padding to icon, go ahead, be creative, go boss. But you better love testing, because things are bound to get real. Like Anya usually says, make friends with the developers. So there's a reason for this, guys. If you are going to be a unicorn and be unique and, you know, try and reinvent the wheel and not take any learnings from someone who's done this before, you are bound for a world of pain. Never say never. So investigate, learn, and try your best to, you know, see what works. I'm most probably just reiterating this. So that's me. This is the slideshowy bit of this whole thing. As I said afterwards, if we're done and we've answered all the questions, and I've done doing a small little workshop on how to start and where to start and little basic tools of Figma. And there's a video. I will add it on this last slide. So somewhere over there at the bottom. Fantastic. So for anyone who has never in their entire life seen Figma, this is Figma. You pretty much have like a layer pan on your left-hand side. You can add more pages. You have pages here, assets. This is very much your asset library. Once you create it, it'll be in there. I actually want to not have any assets selected. So these are libraries that I had active. We don't want libraries active because we are going to play with libraries just now. I do not know why my cover image is, okay, never mind, I'm back. Cool. So that that concludes the presentation part of this. Somewhere in there, I said, can you show us something? This is the part where I show you something. I've created a page called Sandpit so that we can play in there. And yeah, so again, just the basic layout. I do not use the browser version of Figma. However, there's not a large difference between the native desktop version versus the browser version. Look, guys, anyone with a Unix or Linux machine using the weird Brave browser can access your Figma file. You do not need a special Mac to access this file because they've got a browser-based version thereof. And that's what, like, guys, the fact that people can collaborate with me is one of the main reasons. So yeah, long story short, there's a browser version. It doesn't look exactly like this. So if I point at things and it's not where I said exactly, YouTube is your friend. It will definitely teach you what I can't. Cool. So at the top, there's tabs. All your files would most probably be listed there. There's a little drop down here where you can do most of your actions. And then the rest is basically self-explanatory. There's an arrow and then there's a scale tool. This took me a while to find. I think I was using Figma for 3 months before I figured out how to scale things, which is silly. Look, it's there for a reason. It's hidden. You should not be scaling things somewhere by hand. But yeah, so that's where you do that. Then there's frames. Frames are like artboards, different shapes. They've got different Boolean tools, guys. There's whole hour-long YouTube clips on how to illustrate within Figma, the illustration power and how they treat filling of objects and all kinds of stuff is mind-blowing, but I'm not going to go into that. There's a pen tool and a pencil tool. Pencil is very freehand, and they've recently done an update where I have not tested this, but if you draw a circle, no, I did something wrong. Forget I said that. Nothing happened. No one looked. Then there's a text tool. Then there's obviously a little hand tool, but spacebar obviously does the same thing. And then there's a comment tool. If you are not, I'm going to talk about licensing. You can do most of the things that you need to do on Figma for free. It starts costing money as soon as you build a design system and you want to share that library with other files. And it starts costing money once you have more than 3 pages. They changed that licensing fairly recently. You usually used to be able to have infinity pages and 3 documents. They've changed that. The free version is now a little bit different, but all of that's obviously on their website, so you can have a look-see. Just know this, as I don't think there's a better tool for a student. You can literally do most of the things that you need to do for free. It's free of charge. And if you want to do fancy schmancy things, they have special academic licenses for people who are busy studying. So all of that mumbo jumbo said, we're not here to talk about how cool Figma is. I already fangirled about that earlier. We're talking about design systems. So look, a lot of people already work in large companies and they think that, how am I going to introduce a design system? And I'm actually going to stop sharing and share my face for this specific moment. They are with their hands, look at my hair, hands in their hair the whole time, because they are living in a world where there are so many different infrastructures. There are so many different people working on different things, teams solving problems because business insists on it. And that's not going to change. Like, nothing I say here today will change the fact that stuff will keep on happening without any control. There's different demands, different business reasons why things need to happen at a time that they do. What I can say is that you are most probably already in the process of unwillingly creating some form of a design system, whether it be your developers having some secret sneaky storybook somewhere with all of their CSS in there, or if it's your designer kids having palettes that are specifically, you know, for everything, and they're insisting that you stick to brand. It's happening, whether you want it or not. People are saying, you know, the system is bad, it kills creativity. It doesn't. All good things have rules. So if you stick to the rules, it'll feel like you're all holding hands, and it does make working together easier. Like Anya said, make a developer your friend today. So I'm going to go back to sharing. I thought it was really boring looking at the gray screen earlier. And I want to hide my face because no one wants to look at my ear. Cool. So let's imagine for a second we have nothing. We have the luxury of starting from scratch. So what are we making? Let me see. Now, seeing as we were talking about Lord of the Rings earlier, I'm sure Sauron needs some application. I don't know. Oh, that's evil enough. Okay, cool. So this man comes to you. Guys, this is the perfect scenario. No one has built anything. There are no platforms. There are no nightmares. Everything has gone right. This is a brand new startup. Sauron needs to have a social app. He failed tremendously at everything else. And there's a reason why Sauron failed at domination, people. It's because he was too focused on power. He had Saruman and orcs and men of the East and Nazgul and all kinds of people in his corner. But he was so focused on himself. This is how design systems fail. You can't have domination when you are focused on yourself. It's a team effort. So, okay, Sauron needs some help. He needs a social app of some sort. He has nothing. He has only domination and anger. So I think in the real world, he would have a workshop, and he would have his developers and his business analysts and his designers and his marketing people in that room. And he's like, guys, I know there's only 2 of you, but you all are wearing 50 hats because this is a startup. But I need some branding, and I need some presentation. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I actually think I'm going to seem obsessed, but I did kind of think this through for 2 seconds before today. I did actually download there it is. I'm going to be evil and make his logo an actual Lord of the Ring font. So I'm creating a logo because that's where, for the purpose of today, where we'll start. So okay, so that is Sauron's logo. So obviously, you know, Sauron said, listen, we need a logo, we need a palette. So for the sake of not considering, you know, all the affordance going forward and creating a 1,000-part palette, we are just going to assume that Sauron has approximately, I don't know, 5 colors. I am going to assume that red would most definitely be one of those. Again, guys, if this feels like it's really beneath your expectation of where to start, this is very much just to teach people how to use the basics of Figma and how to start a design system if you have nothing. How you scale this is all up to you. Cool. So they're definitely going to need more colors. That's an awful color. Apologies. That's an even worse color. That seems about right. And yeah, cool. So, you know, now you're starting. This is now the workshop. I'm imagining all of you are giving me this amazing information. So Sauron now has a logo. Everyone's in agreement. You know, the Nazgul was excited. Dragons coughed fire. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Then the marketing team, yes, they are very like involved in this process because they can already imagine all of their 50 digital campaigns, insist on a good color palette because brand. And then, yeah, so the smart thing is to do is to kind of from the beginning, since the day one, start documenting your goodies. So in Figma, if you want to add a color to your file as like a system color, you add these 4 little dots, you click on the create a style, and then, you know, you can call this gray. Now, Figma does something really cool. It considers CSS and how developers work. So as soon as you do use things like forward slashes and stuff, it automatically creates folders, and we'll talk about that later if there's time. But for this scenario, I'm just going to call this gray. I'm going to call this maroon. My mom would have had an interesting comment about maroon. Red. Oh, well, I'm not going to follow my instincts. And, why not? We'll call that sewer. And the marketing team insisted that we call this yolk because yellow was not good enough. Cool. So this is fantastic because now as a designer person, I am happy because I can always use the same colors for the same things. But this doesn't really help your development team. And this is why Anya said, you know, make a developer friend today, because they are on the side, obviously building their own style. They are obviously on the side building their own style sheets, and they want to know what this crazy designer kid chose as their color values that they will be using for the rest of their lives. So let's use Roboto for now. Let's not make a giant. This is obviously just notes. And the cool thing is, if you click on this gray box and you inspect the elements, they are pretty much, what am I doing wrong? No, that's all right. They are pretty much giving you the hex value of this. And you can give that to your, you can put that on your little design system to make it easier. If your design system is going to cater more for just things being developed, you're most probably going to give them more than hex values and give them RGBs and all kinds of other stuff for other uses. But for now, we imagine there's never going to be any other uses. We're just giving them this. Yay, listen to me. I speak to my computer often. It's not creepy when people are at home, but when I'm alone, that's when it concerns me. Okay, I am actually just overthinking this, but the point of this exercise is please make sure that, you know, everyone around you knows what yoke is. This is obviously the one that I didn't copy because it's not necessary, but in this case, I'm now asking everyone to make sure what everything is. So yeah. For the sake of this exercise, you make sure people know, you know, what's happening here. The reason why you want live color styles or you want to create live text or type styles is that if you figure out while you are, because listen, this is, you've heard this 1,000 times, kind of building the plane while flying it. This is happening. It's real life. This is going to keep on happening. You're going to develop a pilot product using all of these things, and you're going to chuck stuff together, and it's going to be a war zone. And someone is going to come to you straight afterwards, and they're going to say, you know what? Yoke's not going to work. Yoke is offensive. We can't use yoke. And then you've done so much work in 50 different places, and you are going to resign or cry, either one of the two. Depends on where you are, if there's a cry cubicle at your office or if you're working straight from home. And, you know, stuff's going to get bad. So start documenting early because it makes your life easier going forward. Fantastic. So that said, we are then creating text styles. Again, guys, you know, designer kids, look at this stuff. It's giving you the CSS. It's telling you the font family. It's giving you the font size. It's giving you the line height. It's making it super easy to give that information to your developer and chat to them and go like, hey, dude, is this going to display weird? Is this going to work? Does this look the same as you know, have that conversation. It's massively important to have it early on. Don't do your whole design system and then go to your developers and go like, this is it. I have fixed the problem. I have now made this thing, make it so, because you are going to have a world of pain. One, there is not going to be any adoption like with the whole design system because no one was involved and they didn't give their opinion when it mattered. And two, there's not going to be any respect between two parties because you're dumping a load of work onto people who have now got to figure out what you are thinking. So again, chat to your peeps. Okay, so for the sake of creating something ugly and crazy, but just to show what I mean, I am now going to create, a header 1, a header 2, a header 3, body copy big, body copy small. Life is not this simple, but we are creating something on the fly. My airplane does not have wings. I'm sorry, guys, we're not flying anyway. It's wishful thinking. Make it bigger. That's what people would say. I hope everyone can see what's happening. Am I still sharing my screen correctly? Yes. Fantastic. There's people on the other side.
There are people out there
talking to you. I see chats. The chats could have been saying like, hello, can anyone see her screen? Fantastic. So H3, let's make that 18. Again, please don't look at this and think this mad woman is teaching us how to design. She's definitely not doing this today. Guys, there's lots of like arguments about how text displays everywhere. And again, not my pony that I'm getting on today. I'm not going to have that fight and disagreement with people. Okay, so this is body. And this is, I don't know, tags. Let's call it tags. Okay, so you heard that thing. I'm going to stop right here. And I'm going to show you my face. You heard that thing that I said just now that says, let's call it. Let's call it is the most dangerous thing that can ever happen, ever. Language is super important. People need to make sure while they're around this workshop table, you know, while Saron is gathering these two people who are wearing 50 hats, they're developers, designers, business analysts, and all of those good thingies and product owners, and yeah, 50 hats. These people need to really think about language. So, and I don't mean like chuck around big A words like affordance and accessibility and all kinds of big things that make people sound as important as they are. That has real value, but it's another language as well. I mean, your people around the table that are going to work together needs to understand what you call certain stuff. If someone calls something a pull and another person calls something a tag and another person calls something a bubble, and there are so many names for the same things in different areas and even in the same areas that miscommunication happens, and then the whole point of collaboration goes down the drain. So that's why I said, let's call it tag is the most dangerous thing I've ever said. Not ever, just now. And it needs to be agreed upon inside of your documentation and inside of your workshop, how you say things and how you speak about things. And if you're comfortable calling stuff tags, just make sure that everyone knows what you're saying when you're saying it. Again, wormhole. I can literally talk about that most probably for longer than I should. But let's get back to drawing my ugly picture and hiding my ear. Cool. So now we've created these things and we've kind of decided like, oh, okay, cool. This is the sizes that we think will work for, we imagine will work for our pilot product that we are building after this. Again, this will change, but yeah, for the sake of me choosing life, we are imagining stuff happens in this order. So I can also add text styles to my file. And all of this will be exported into my library to make sure that everyone can use the same text styles and the same color palettes, etc., etc., etc. So let's call this H1. I could have done this before we had this little chat ski, but I don't think there's a lot of value in having a predetermined setup when people don't really see how things get put together, and people can't correct me afterwards and say, why did you do it that stupid way? There's a quicker way. And then I don't learn. So this is how you learn, you share. Tags. Cool bananas. So like I did here, very important. I can then go and inspect and pretty much see all of the goodies that my dev guy might want to know. And he can then, without having to go inspect, just quickly have a look, see, and see if his stuff is correct. So I can specify everything. And you know, this is very basic documentation, but it's just polite. Just be kind to the people around you. It's worth it, definitely worth it. Okay, cool. So obviously I will do that for all of them, not today, but whatever styles you have, document them to make it visually easy to go and find out what's happening. So you don't have to dig. Some people like digging, others don't. Cool. So now you have text styles and, you know, you have colors and you've got a logo. Again, life's not this simple. You might want some effects of sorts. I'm actually going to place all of this junk onto an artboard. And I think it would be easier for you guys to see like this. You also might get a suntan from the very bright background. I know everyone likes dark mode. Sorry, I'm hurting you. Made you look. So, effects. So say, for instance, you know your boss is your boss. He's not your colleague, he's your boss, and he's stuck in the 90s. And if there's one thing that man really loves, it's a drop shadow. You know you're going to use that drop shadow everywhere. You can specify a certain type of drop as well. It doesn't have to be that far down. That's a bit aggressive, a little bit unnecessary. And like everything else, you can add this to your, nope, don't do that. You can add this to your styles and you can call it Mega Drop and add it to all the cards that he wants to add drop shadows to later on. Cool bananas. Also important to add little headings to all of your stuff. I'm so sorry, my friends. Obviously didn't plan this part very well, did you? So have we lost people yet? Am I yapping for too long?
We're still here.
That's fantastic. How lovely. Whoa.
A bit harder to get rid of.
Oh, that's how kind. Okay. So you can have more than one effect. Everyone knows that, you know, there's different types of effects. You can have drop shadows, and I'm not going to add 50 billion just for the sake of all my cards looking the same. I've, you know, added my 90s drop shadow there. And I now start considering taking this thing outside and playing with it and building something that looks like something. So first things first, obviously, this is the very, very basic starting point. From here, you will start developing like different types of engagement components, like little, I don't know, radio buttons and form fields, depending on what you need for this ugly pilot thing that you are about to build. So, but we're not starting with that. We're just starting to play with whatever we've got here. So I'm going to create another one next to it, another board. And let me think about how I want to do this. I have missed a very important part. Something that you are going to chat to your people in the room with is what type of grid system you are going to use and how much padding you are going to use and all the type of things that you want to kind of specify beforehand. I'm actually, because we are building, I'm going to start with mobile first, because we are building something for Sauron, I'm going to pick a smallish device that's already got a bootstrap column on it. If you don't know what that is, I will share a link afterwards, but it pretty much, there are different ways of looking at things and spacing of things and as many designers make the mistake of just plomping things all over and expecting the developer to create stuff from nowhere, and he doesn't understand why he gets met with evil eye and why the thing doesn't look the same afterwards. It's because it was ill considered and stuff went horribly wrong when, you know, nothing aligned to nothing. So we're not going into much detail about that. Nope, that's not what I did. I said, you come here. Going to use that. Again, people, if you don't use Figma and you're not used to Figma, the community is super helpful. If you go to the community page and you search for, I don't know, a grid, there's going to be a whole bunch of grids that's already been set up for you. There are so many friendly, lovable people who have made a lot of effort to try and save other people time. And they create little 8-pixel spacers and everything for you so that you don't have to do that when you start designing your first scamp or wireframe or actual design. So talking about 8 pixels and padding and spacing and things, a good start would be to set your nudge amount. Because we're using a bootstrap grid, we definitely want to use 8 pixels. A little tricksy I've learned over the years is to make your small nudge 8 pixels and your big nudge 2. The reason for that is if you start working and just going to make a duplicate of this. How you usually do a big nudge is you hold in shift. So let's zoom in for the sake of avoiding madness. So if I hold in shift and I move it, it's moving 2 pixels because that's now the big nudge. But because I've made my small nudge 8 pixels, it's just a little bit less work, one less button to press every time you want to nudge things around, because you use your big nudge more than you use your small nudge. So there is a little bit of a tricksy for people who didn't want weird trixies. Okay, cool. So we are building a nightmare. We're not building anything that makes sense. So I've got my horrid picture of Sauron. My cat is attacking the door. Stuff is really lively in the back. If you want to have your developer commit suicide, you have decimals. They will literally seppuku, fall on their sword right there, right then. Stop hurting them. It's not necessary. Cool. So again, I'm not going to follow the grid to the T. Ain't nobody got time to nudge and squeeze and move things and make it fit 100%. I just want to illustrate the value of this design system we are building. So why on earth did I break it? Oh, that's all. Never mind, I'm back. Okay, all things saved. Okay, cool. So we've got our little 2-column grid. It's nicely set up. I started from a bootstrap grid. I pretty much trust that UI prep of mine very, very much. I don't have to think about this afterwards. It's awesome. Cool. So now we have to create a component of our logo. This is our first component that we're going to create. Everything else up until this point was library items. So what a component is, it's something that I can reuse over and over again, and it's an asset. So I can, if I import this library or activate this library in any of my other Figma files and I have access to it, I can then import this component, and anything I do from it, it's pretty much like a design library. So you'll see it makes 4 little solid blockies. And if you have 4 little solid blocks, it means this is the parent. So wherever I use this, it'll have an empty state. This means that it is a child. This means that it is the component's copy. So I can do all kinds of strange things to this copy. I can make it red and do all kinds of weird stuff. But I can also revert it back to the way that I found it before. We're not going to do that right now. Know that if I do anything strange on my original component, it will obviously do that live on anything else. So don't give the world access to your original design system. They might just kill everything that you've ever made. Cool. So I don't have a white on here, which is silly, but let's ignore that for now. No, let's not. Let's not. Apologies. What I will do, however, is I won't go into the whole story again. Okay. Make it black. Go. I should play canned laughter every time I tell a little joke ski. So it's not so quiet. Or maybe play background music. Cool. Okay, so now we at least have a white thingy happening here. You'll see a little bit of a an overlay of the columns that I have on there permanently. If it does annoy you and you're getting a little bit sad and you can't see what you're doing, you can just obviously hide it. Okay, so Sauron, fantastic. What else will be? Let's create our first card. So while building the airplane and flying it, you'll see that you create a component. And this is where things get fuzzy, because not all components will work for all scenarios. If you are building this design system from a pilot that's very much a front-end website, and someone's asking you to create an app or something strange, some weird business tool of sorts, not all of the components that they create will be able to scale or work for the components that are being used front-end. So it's worth creating a component library, but keeping things modular and making it easy to create other components from components will be your friend eventually. Because if you create everything and it's finished and it's the only way to do things, you will lose adoption. People will go away. Why am I using small nudge? No one's stopping me, that's why. Fantastic. Okay, so now I'm creating my first card. And I'm going to hide my auto layout. I'm going to hide those thingy-mabobs. Okay, I'm going to give, if you want to give something a corner, you change the corner radius here. Let's make it 4 pixels. Oh, let's make it 8, because we are now in the 90s or early 2000s. No, man. Why am I offending the people? 8. Okay, so we're making it 8. And we want to use that early, very heavy drop shadow that we have picked earlier. It's a mega drop. And we now see this component, or we see this card, and we think, whoa, that is hot. And we see we offended people already, and no one told us. And now we think, listen, this is something that we might be using quite often. So instead of me, creating my my component within the plane that I'm flying, it's always good to bring it back to your design system. There are different naming conventions. People have different names for the same thing over and over again. And mostly components will have actual things inside of it, and there will be subcategories. But for this exercise, let's ignore all of that. So please rename stuff. Don't do what I'm doing right now. There's a reason why you need to rename stuff, and I'll show you exactly the reason for that right now. I'm going to call this card. This is the messiest design file I've seen. I think, Skulk, maybe you have seen a messier one than this.
Yeah, my own.
Again, I can go to my library now and add my little card in here. I can center it and then nudge it at 16 pixels. And yeah, long and short, let's have a massive toggle to switch off and switch on Sauron, and that'll be the last thing that I'm going to show you just now. So I'm going to create a component for a toggle. Please, this is literally not very well thought out. Oh, there you go. Oh, this is going to be horrid. Anyway, I'm doing this. Cool. Cool. Okay, so I am now going to create this as an active state. I'm going back to my layers. And there's my component. And I'm going to call this toggle / on. Now, obviously, guys, naming conventions, very important. You could have the name of whatever the component is called. You could have a state, or you could have, like the on and off is definitely a state. But you can add things to this to explain the type of component that you have designed. So if you can design, I don't know, mobile specific components or things that only work in certain situations, it's important to keep that part of this naming convention, because then you can switch between all of them when you start scaling your design system. So I'm going to call this toggle on for the sake of not having madness and going into too much detail, seeing as this is an intro. So we're calling this toggle on. We're calling this toggle off. And now I'm going to show you something called variants. So again, you're going to have 50 billion of these toggles. Some of them are going to be toggle for mobile, toggles massive, toggles on, toggles off, whatever. For this very simple scenario, we just have on and off. So you select both of your components and you say combine as variants. So what this now pretty much does is it takes my top toggle, my first one, and it makes it the main component in my design library. And whenever I actually use it, I can then toggle the state inside of this panel. So the more of these I have, the more control I will have over my variants. So now if I go to my design system, I don't necessarily have 50 billion weird things that I have to go through. I have one toggle, and I know if I add this toggle to my actual design, I can cater for any variants. This is specifically cool when you start having active fields, form fields, deactive hover states, all kinds of stuff, 5 different states for the same thing. As a designer, it's usually a nightmare to design 50 sizes of the same thing, as well as 50 states of the same thing, and then adding that to a design system, because going to find it afterwards in your DSM is an absolute nightmare. Now you literally look for toggle, you drag it in, and you pick the specific state that you want to display for your design. So that is the short and sweet. Again, I can go on for hours. Oh, the very important thing, people now have decided to riot. They hate yolk. They don't think it's a good color for Sauron. I'm also just going to add this here. This is why Sauron lost. Exactly this. If anyone wanted to know why Sauron lost, this is why Sauron lost. So, yeah. So now you've got your whole thing. You've built the plane. It's flying with one wing. It's doing little circular movements. And people come back and they've done users tests, or they've asked their mother, like they usually do, or their wife, and their mother and their wife said, yolk is wrong. You can't use yolk. Yolk is offensive. So it's literally as easy as going into your color here. I see yolk as an overlay, so yolk was wrong to start off with. But anyway, so you go into your color here and you ask them, what is the new color? Sauron says all the colors are too warm. He wants a little bit of, you know, balance. He wants it to be blue. And your whole design system updates on here, as well as your components that you have created, as well as your designs that you have created, everything one place. So if anyone didn't know the power of a design system, the same goes for type. If, you know, if this textile, if roboto is very offensive, and we all want that to be Poppins, bold, and the height was wrong and everything like that, we can update it in one central point, and it literally updates your designs. Yes, this is going to happen. Yes, you can't change your design system without letting everyone know. You can't do this in isolation, because then you will never have domination. So cool. I think that's it. I think we're ready to definitely go to questions. Again, guys, this is not the best examples of how stuff like this works. I can highly recommend going to the community and having a look. There's a whole bunch. Hey, though, I meant design. Is it just ignoring me? There. I think I broke. No, I didn't break it. There's like billions of free versions of things, and you can find material UI on here, and you can find something like if you interview, there's a Viewtify starter kit on here. There's so many components and things that's already been developed. You do not have to start from scratch. Go and watch what they've done. There's simpler versions. Always remember that your design system is not a design system if it's not actually developed. Your pretty UI that you are drawing there is only the beginning of how something like this would look if it starts. Up until the point where the CSS does not happen and there's not a collaboration between your team, you cannot legally call this a design system. I will find you. And yeah, that's pretty much the short and sweet. This is my version of what is design systems. Like, as I said, millions of people saying the same things.
That was great. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Hi, Inge.
Hey,
I'm
Jurek.
Sharik. I work with Liesel. What plan do you have with Figma?
I've got a paid plan. So I personally invested in a paid Figma plan. Is that the question? Do you want to know what plan? I've got like the
Which of the paid plans? The personal one again.
Yeah, so I've been on the business plan with companies. I'm not going to buy it for myself. As a consultant, I use it mostly to do small things for myself, build small design systems for myself. As I mentioned earlier, no one is designing or developing without building their own little tiny version thereof. But yeah, if I do anything, I build my own little things and tinker with things. But yeah, I have used the business one.
I've got a question. Sorry, Jurek, are you happy? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So if you are a freelancer and I'm sure you then collaborate with other companies or work with companies, what are they good with you using the tool of your choice? Or do they perhaps at times ask you to use what they're using?
Yes, I've warped back in time fairly recently, and this is most probably why I love Figma more. I've had to install Craft on my machine 2 months ago, and I had to do it 3 times. Hi, my name is Inge, and I've installed Craft successfully. Look, guys, I failed to mention that I'm a big fan of Figma. And to answer the question, I have to use other programs. I have to play with XD. I have to play with Sketch. I have to be versatile as a designer. If it was up to me and if someone gave me the opportunity, I would live in Figma. I've done print work. I've done anything that you can imagine. I've done my mother's CV. So if it was up to me, I would use one program because I only need to use one. I can collaborate. I can do what I want. It has all of the tools and the flexibility and accessibility in there. But yeah, I unfortunately, I cannot insist that full organizations move just because it makes sense, because sometimes there are external companies that have consultants that have licensing to Sketch, and then you have to do this whole conversion and chat with the business to go, listen, you have 50 plugins and you have this many things that you're spending money on, and you could be spending that same money on one thing. And then, you know, it's a conversation that's not necessarily gonna be won.
You mentioned tool fatigue in your talk, and that's what actually made me think. So we're in the process of moving. So everything new starts in Figma. Everything that's already done in XD is in XD now, and if we want to move it, it's quite the process. And so we might have a designer who starts in XD in the morning and he finishes on Figma in the afternoon, and then expectation of a person to, yeah.
I give them the Hunger Games salute.
Inga, isn't there like a metaphor there about planes and then building them? I think that's applicable here.
It is. Look, I've done the same thing. I was in between where people were trying. Startups love this. Like young companies love this. They find new tools to solve problems every week. Like every sprint planning session is like, oh, project planning, have you seen this tool? Or, oh, have you seen this tool? So I was at a company where we were using 3 design tools at the same time. It does not inspire happiness. It doesn't work. Like, pick one, merge, put the effort in, make work of it, move stuff. Like, the stuff that you really need, move it into one place. You are going to hate both programs if you try and hop between 2.
Yeah, agreed. Any other questions? If you do have a question, just unmute yourself and ask.
I have a million. I'll ask one. Why? I'm curious. So you mentioned that survey, and you knew this was coming. So you mentioned that survey, and according to that specific survey, only 40% of people feel that the design system that was implemented was some degree of successful. I actually find it quite strange that they don't dive into that deeper in the actual results, but you know, it is what it is. It definitely lines up with my anecdotal experience. I have seen a lot of design systems that just get discarded after some time, which is a pity because it tends to be more work to make things modular. Because you need to think about like, okay, what are all the possible use cases? You need to anticipate a lot of things and so forth. What would be your subjective gut feeling why so many design systems are not considered successful?
Can I give you top 3? Because I have millions of reasons. So the first reason why they don't work is the same reason Sauron failed: power. So the first reason is you have design versus development and versus business and versus this. It's the versus should completely be removed from the very first moment that this thing starts. And everyone should try and have some form of participation. And if you have participation, and this is all 3 reasons in one, you'll have adoption. Because if I have put a brick inside of a house, it's now mine. I made it. And if people get excluded and people work in isolation and designers go off on a tangent and they build a whole design system without consulting anyone, or the developers build all the documentation within a storybook or something and they don't consult anyone and they make up their own rules, and you have pillars, you will fail every time. This is hard work. It's like training new staff. It is absolutely a nightmare. You have more than a month of people working at half capacity. People are fighting and they're crying and they're not getting to their tasks and they're in 50 meetings. But if you've onboarded someone correctly, you will have more time and you will have more assets. And that analogy is the same for design systems. If you've done it correctly, you've spent the time and you've involved the right people and you have adoption, you will have more time because all of the basic rules will have been ironed out fairly early. Have the fights early. That's 3 reasons. There are many more. That one of my favorites, I missed it. People try and finish the thing. There is no such thing as finishing a design system. You will never finish it. You will deploy it as you move along and you will change it often and yolk will turn into blue and your life will never be a consistent. It's not a project. It doesn't have an end. It's an organic being. This is your life now. You should assimilate. Just become one. Like if you do not move towards the light, if you do not, find yourself advocating for this thing, loving it and making it your child and loving the people working on it and combining groups of people and asking difficult questions, and you expect to deliver something and move away, you are in for a world of pain because this thing is never finished.
That's one layer of what you're doing. So you've got design and design processes, you've got development and development processes. You've got a framework within which, like a Scrum framework or whatever you choose, and you have to work within that. What is your working cycles? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? It's all those layers that are working together. And if that's not in sync, the design system is never going to work.
Your marketing department, the Peregrine Tooks of the world, the ambitious, lively, wonderful, colorful people of the world will destroy your design system if you do not involve them in the branding part of it. They will take you down. You don't even think they need to be part of a design system. They do. They're very much part of the branding and tone part of your design system. You need to involve everyone from the beginning and have people love the thing as much as you do. Because if they, as I said, if they lay their one brick in there will be adoption because they will feel like they're part of it. And I think not a lot of people do that.
Yeah, no, I like definitely agree. I would go even further. I would say you essentially need to become a design system driven product. there's no half measures. And I see this with things like Agile as well, quite a lot, where there's because I find that Agile is a very, very super powerful tool. There's a lot of marketing around it in terms of advocates for it, and people saying it's going to change your life and it's going to change your organization, and it does all those things. But I think we are not honest about what it requires of you, and there's a misconception that it requires less management. And I found that it actually requires more management. It requires kind of managers to be more present. And I find the same with design systems. I think there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of, advocates for design systems and so forth. And fair enough, there's a lot of hype as well, and the hype isn't necessarily a bad thing. Hype is how we got like HTML5 and CSS3. But I think there's not enough honest discussions around what it requires of you. There's a lot of discussion around the benefits, but there's not a lot of discussion around listen, there's a big cost here. And that cost is you need to go all in. This is now going to drive the way you do marketing. It's going to drive the way you do new, add new features to your site, how you do user testing. It's literally, you have to back to Sauron, you're essentially going to have to defer a lot of things to this process. And have this process drive the way your organization works, and I think that's my personal take. Why we see so many failed design systems, because people embrace it because they hear a lot of amazing things about it, but no one's having honest discussions around the cost.
I have a return question, but what is life without it? Without rules, we have anarchy, and everyone's doing what they want, and you have 50 different things, and your marketing team is whining because your brand is ever fizzling out and nothing looks the same, and everyone's trying to put their finger in everyone's pies, and lots of arguments and inconsistencies. And what is life without a design system? It's also work.
Yeah, and I think also, and this is kind of like fighting words, and I'm willing to state that publicly, and anyone who wants to send any hate mail, you can get my email address from Liesel. I honestly think, and I'm saying this as someone with a background in design, I studied 7 years post-grad in design as well, that I think product design, I think is in a strange place, where we still hold to a lot of the so I don't know if anyone has read Speaking Machine by John, I never know how to pronounce his surname, Madia. He's one of those guys that everyone loves to hate. But he, I think he very rightly points out that, we're in a bit of a crisis where the origins of the world of design comes from a specific place where we had things like pen and paper and wood and metal, and now we're kind of working within the realm of computing, and and computing is a material, just like pen and ink and so forth. And as someone with a background in design and in visual arts, I often talk about, you need to have some type of at the very least some type of superficial understanding of the materiality of the thing that you're working with. If you're painting with ink, you need to kind of know what can you do with this medium. You don't need to understand it in depth, but you need to know, like, if you're painting with oil or you're painting with acrylic, like, these are the properties of that specific thing that is gonna, like, is kind of going with the grain of that material, and what goes against the grain of that material. And I honestly think that, and once again, you know, like, this is fighting words, but I honestly think, like, there's a big pushback in the design community in terms of actually familiarizing themselves with some of these, like just how computing works, and then what are good design ideas within the world of computing and what are bad design ideas. And I think it's maybe because of this kind of like whole, like, right brain, left brain dichotomy or whatever. But, like, I see a lot of pushback in terms of people just, like, getting to grips with the fundamentals of the medium that they're working with. I can't really say why, but I think that also gets in the way of creating effective design systems, because you don't even have a shallow understanding of, like, what's the context that it's going to be used in. And, you know, yeah, I've said enough. There goes my career.
I don't think Anya's here, but I would like to just say again, make a developer your friend. Like,
Yeah.
you're 100% correct. I agree. You don't know your medium, and if you are fighting against it, you will never be able to deliver any, not even your best work, but good work. You need to understand what you're playing with.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm a big fan. I think I've said this to you before. I'm a big fan of John Mader. I saw him at the Design in Durban when I had longer hair and less wrinkles. And I also said I haven't read that book, but him live, wow, changed. He was one of two people. I think Ben Terrett from the UK was one of the other people at the Design in Durban that year that changed my mind about design and how they look at the design. And yes, he is. I wouldn't call him someone people love to hate. I absolutely love him. He does say a few things in a, like you mentioned, contrived way. But yeah. So what I would like to say is I apologize for our people. We should stop hurting each other. We should work together. Yes. People should not push back. Like, if this is your medium, then you should definitely make some effort and try and at least to understand how things work. Not necessarily know how to do them, but at least know how they work.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I wanted to say we used to have a joke, but it was years ago. It doesn't apply anymore, but it was sort of like a inside company joke. And we used to say, if a designer doesn't know what to do, they just put a search box somewhere to fill a gap. But then the developers had to build that, and nobody asked. Luckily, we're past that point now where that doesn't happen anymore. But it is just because the designer didn't understand what they are proposing, the developers do, So yeah.
Justin actually shared I don't know if I agree 100%, but so, like, he shared a tweet with me recently by a guy, Mark Dalgish. He's kind of pretty well known within the world of front-end development and so forth, and he said something along the lines of, if a design system isn't in code, it's like, if it isn't written in code, it's actually just design suggestions. So I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but and I think this is the distinction. I think when a lot of the designers hear that, they kind of hear they need to learn to code. And that I don't agree with that. But I think they need to understand how computing works. They don't need to understand how computers work, but they need to understand the principles of computing. Things like thinking in terms of, like, states, thinking in terms of, state transitions, things that are mutually exclusive. Like all of that. Like I think one of the biggest rookie mistakes I see is people who have no concept of responsive design. and they just give two completely different designs. You know, they give a desktop design and they give a mobile design, and they're like, and it's like effectively two different websites. And they're like,
Just
hey,
do-
developer,
Make two
developer,
websites.
do your thing. Here's your responsive website. It's like,
Who needs breaking points? Just make two.
exactly. Just load a completely different website on mobile. But yeah. But yeah, like I'm also aware that, you know, there is some sensitivity around that, and like there might be some people who got mad by me saying that. But yeah, like I honestly feel that, and that is kind of my anecdotal experience as well. Is I think that's kind of where we as designers need to push ourselves a bit.
I have a question, if you don't mind. I've heard something similar to what Scott was mentioning, but they said if it's not in code, it's just a component library. But yeah, so in terms of, I've started building a design system for my company, or Woolworths, let's put it that way. And it's, you know, they've got an established brand, they know how things look. So what would be your sort of advice as to what's important? Where would you start, basically? Because it's quite a big task, put it that way.
As I mentioned in the beginning, I think the best place to start is to get the same people in the same room. And I know it's difficult now, no one can get in the same room, but you need to get representatives from each department almost, and build your own little design system squad. Because if you don't have people from all the parts of your business investing, it won't work. So the best place to start is to have a workshop of sorts and to see what you already have, do an audit of all the assets and components and things that you are already using, do a proper, like a brand audit, and see what's happening. I believe firmly if you see the discrepancies between all of the things that you already have, it also inspires people to try and be more deliberate and be a little bit clearer and make a plan. So yeah, my first steps would be start a workshop, get a plan, see what there is, do an audit, and pick a pilot project. Say, listen, we are now going to do this one thing right, and by doing this one thing right, we are going to build out our design system, and we are going to break it often, and we are going to learn, and we are going to try and roll it out to other pieces as soon as it's strong enough to be actually called a design system and not a glorified UI library. But yeah, I think that is most probably my suggestion. I do not know your organization. I do not know your constraints. Everything in everyone's environment is different, and it's difficult. There's rules and there's time involved, and time is money. So, you know, getting the right people involved from the beginning is quite important.
Thank you.
Inga, have you read How to Make Sense of Any Mess?
You have asked me this before, so still no.
I think I have it here as well. Yeah, I'll also have a print copy of it. It's quite a short book. It's a great book. It's meant to be on information architecture. But it's intentionally very broad, so it doesn't necessarily speak to any specific like practice or process or field. It kind of speaks to systematizing things, and like I think it really opened my eyes to making sure that everyone's speaking the same language, and not only that we're using the same words, but ontologically, when we refer to things, that we have the same intent. Like when we talk about, like, let's make something up. Let's talk about, like, in our app, there's this thing called a squiggly. And not only should we agree on like what is a squiggly, but like, what is the core thing there? Like, what's the purpose? Why do we even have that thing? What problem does it solve for us? And also, you know, like, what is kind of the prominent aspects of it? What's the thing that makes that different from, let's say, a drop down or an icon or whatever? I highly encourage it. I think you can actually read it for free online. It's a really, really great book. Yeah. Yeah, and you didn't mention, and you also didn't mention atomic design. You mentioned it in passing.
I went like Brad Frost, pew pew.
But yeah, that's also a great book for me. And also pattern language. Yeah, it's kind of where a lot of these ideas came from. But it's, you know, as the same with responsive design, which a lot of people don't know, it actually comes from the world of architecture. Yeah, a lot of the use things come from the world of architecture as well. There's a phenomenal book, Christopher Alexander, I think, called A Pattern Language, in which he, yes, someone just shared it, in which he kind of looked at this concept of patterns in architecture. So all the way down to like how people configure their living rooms, you know, the TV and the couch, and then upwards to the house and a neighborhood and a city, and how are cities connected, you know, like what are the patterns that evolve there. Yeah, it's great. And I think it also kind of highlights this concept that, you know, patterns can be nested, which I think is like where things start getting really powerful, when you realize that, you know, you are dealing with like different levels of patterns. Yeah.
I would not. Yes, I found the mute button. Just in time. I would not sleep. I could literally actually. This is something I truly love, like systems and automation and making things. Like, I truly believe it makes. I know a lot of people can't see it, but I truly believe if you have proper systems and you manage them correctly, it makes life easier. And who doesn't like making things easier? Like, I think, well, I suppose maybe they are the drama queens of the world, but yeah, there's so much power. Look, it's, as I said before, I drew a parallel, like training new people. There's so much power in having systems and some form of control over many things at the same time, and working together with people and building things that isn't making life hard. I don't know how people do not see the value. Like, it's difficult for me to understand.
I hear you. The idea of doing something 50 times, if you can do it once, document it, and never do it again. You can maybe iterate on it, but why would you want to do the same thing more than once? My head doesn't want to accept that.
No, it's insanity. That is literally the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I can't. Like, I can't. And I think a big problem comes in when people look at the end. They look at the final product. They look at Material UI, or they look at someone like Spotify's design system, and they go, I can't do this. I can't build this. This thing is huge. How? And then they start physically trying to accomplish that from one side. And I think that is maybe 100% how people shoot themselves in the foot. This is very much a process, something that you build up over time. It's like collecting things. You can't just have all of them at the same day. It's never going to work. You need to, it's work. You need to put it in and do it once, do it properly, iterate later, but do it in a fashion that's not hard work.
And you started at the beginning, right? So you don't leave this and come back. You do it right from the start. So another thing that we've like sort of come across, in which we've luckily now, we've crossed the hurdle, is doing automated tests for our development. But at some point we did it, then stopped it a little, and now we have to go back and we have to try and build up that coverage again. If we had just not stopped, like if we had just enforced doing it, because it's so much harder to go retrospectively go back and go try and do it, just follow the process. And if you follow the process, and you just stick to it, and it is rules. Everything needs rules to be sort of successful, I guess. So if you just stick to the rules, then yeah, you're just really gonna look back at whatever product or project you did, and you are going to understand why it's a success. It's because the process was followed. There's a process for a reason.
Yep.
Oftentimes, so obviously for those who are kind of more on the technical side of things, kind of like should be familiar with this concept of technical debt. And I oftentimes speak about process debt as well. So there's a lot of things that we can do that are shortcuts and so forth. And we either need to address them or we can leave them, but the longer we leave them and not address them, like the worse they get. And so I actually find that to be like the case, like properly documenting things and so forth, like you're essentially building process debt. And then you kind of usually get the bill for that when you need to onboard someone. So then you're like, yeah, I'd never realized, like, you're just buying things with your process credit card. And then like when you need to onboard someone, then you get that bill and you're like, oh shit, I should have actually done this the right way.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I 100% get that. And yeah, it's, there's a lot of similarities with technical debt. Is that you're always going to have to push against that, because the forces of the market and the business and all of that is always going to like prioritize short-term gains. So you need to, as someone who is kind of embedded in the process, need to always advocate for, okay, cool, like it doesn't, you don't have any immediate gains, but you need to trust me here that this is going to bite us if we don't do it properly.
Yeah, think about if something scales and you don't have your tests running properly, you don't have your designs, and why are people aren't building products not to make some kind of impact or money from it. So they are all with the idea of scaling. So it makes sense to have your ducks in a row from the start. Building a POC is something else, like we know how that goes. Like there is no money and there is no time, and you just have to show that your idea is working. It's when you start building the actual product, whether that's an MVP or a version 2 or whatever.
I would even start while you're busy with your POC to just start with your thing. Don't call it a design system, but start, because you don't have to then retrospectively go and play catch up. If stuff starts going well and you start getting into a groove and you work well together and you start developing things, and start from day one.
Yeah, like I can actually do an entire talk on that, and like I see that happen quite a lot. Like obviously there's also kind of this concept of like an MVP and so forth, and I find it anti-pattern. I kind of find it problematic when those just completely transition into the actual product when that part is done, because to me, like your proof of concept should actually validate whether there's a need for this thing. And if you've done it properly, then you're not scared to invest resources. Like if you've properly validated, like, listen, there is something here, we can really drive this thing, then you're not going to be like, you're going to say like, okay, cool, now that we're going to do it, we can do it properly because we validated those things. I often find that like that isn't done properly. And, so by the time like the proof of concept is done, we don't have an answer whether it's actually a valid idea or not, because it was just rushed out to get it out and we didn't do it properly in terms of validating. So now we still don't know. So now we've wasted money, we spent money, and we need to have a product out, and we haven't validated it yet. So yeah, like that, it's like, yeah, that's for me like a completely an entire talk on its own. Like there's so many related talks here that I would love to do. I think. Yeah.
I'm just here thinking that talks after talks after talks that has to be had. So yeah, we'll have to book a few.
I think there's also one in terms of, the danger of kind of design systems, and the danger of over modularizing things and over abstracting things, like there's a lot written on that as well. There's the saying that duplication is far cheaper than the wrong abstraction. And like, Kent C. Dodds speaks about, he talks about AHA. So he says, avoid hasty abstractions. So like there's also a danger in systematizing things too early. Because like it's really painful if your system is incorrect and you've made wrong assumptions in your system. But that's a completely different talk. But to me, that's such an interesting discussion to be had as well.
Yeah, look, maybe it's not calling it a system until it is.
That's like the true Scotsman. It's not a real design system.
Oh no, it just looks like one. Don't look here. No, I agree with that. Like you can shoot yourself in the foot. And when I said start early, I had the exact same pathway of thinking than Skulk just had. There's so many times that a proof of concept or an MVP, not necessarily because of poor testing or running out of money or the force not being with it or what, sometimes that thing just becomes the thing because it works. And now you had all these plans that you wanted to fix all the things, and you forever have to look at the things that you did temporary just because we have to get it out. And if you do not have some form of control over what you did, it makes fixing things impossible. So yeah, maybe creating from the beginning, creating something that you're semi-proud of and that has a thing resembling a design system. So that you have some form of, I keep on saying control and it sounds horrid, but it's literally what it is. It's like not herding cats. It's trying to oh no, I'm going to say taking control of the controllables. Please, let's go to bed.
Yeah.
But, the things, the rules, the stuff that you can actually put in little boxes, the system, the automation, the stuff that makes your life easy, do that from the beginning. The documentation, just do the stuff from the beginning and make it easier for yourself to play, because the rest is creative, the rest is learning, and the rest is play. And the iteration and stuff, it's all learning, it's all part of the good stuff. So if you have the right systems in place to play, it's easy. I like easy.
I agree.
Cool. So that's probably a good place to end it off.
Before I say more evil things and start emails with, I don't know, hope this finds you well.
Yeah. Cool. I had a lot of fun. This was super insightful for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Inge. It's amazing. But yeah, I think it's a good time to stop. We've gone for 2 hours.
Sorry, I got a last question. Does anybody know how to find and replace text in multiple Figma pages across your entire system at the same time?
Thanks for that, Derek.
I can Google that for you.
I've tried. Get the same result, but that's not the right answer.
Sorry, but I'm going to be brutally honest about one thing. Like, it's like, I'm sure Jared Leto has an ingrown toenail. Like, everyone can't be perfect. But the Figma and copy needs work. There's definitely a hole there. They don't have automatic spell checking. They don't have anything. You can't even plug in a Grammarly or something in there. So
There is
find
a few
and replace.
plugins for spell.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yeah.
good.
You have to like select. You have to select the frame, and then it will only spell check it.
Yes.
You
No,
can't
it's-
spell check a whole doc.
No, it's very, that is bad. Like they didn't do everything right. Sorry, Figma. Not that you're watching this, but really do more.
That's why you need to make friends with developers, because they have an API and you can get someone to build a plugin for you.
Sure, but the reason why I'm here is so that I don't need 50 plugins. They need to fix that. That is basically
Surely they must know that this is something people want, because they're one of those platforms that build with their users. So they build what their users need. So surely it must be coming, or
sure. But you know,
After this
priority.
video, it's certainly coming.
yep, into there.
It's gonna drop next week.
Going to tag Rogie and go like, hey, at the end, like, you know, 2 hours in, update.
You
Yeah,
turn
just
all
give
of
them the timestamp.
you turn of all of the words that you think may change in the future to something else into components and use them exclusively everywhere.
That is a solution.
Sure, I have so many crazy ideas now. You can probably build an entire dictionary and you can just swap out the words. So you say, I want an adjective. No, I want this. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's maybe stop it over there.
Oh, this is nightmare stuff. We need to leave.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about your find and replace Word full document problem. I
I'll
really
figure it out.
am.
Figure it out. Thank you.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great evening. I will upload this probably tomorrow, and I'll just share it on the meetup event, a link to it. Okay, and then everyone can just forward it to Figma.
Luckily, there's just like what 12, 14 people there. It's not going to be like spam folder.
Cool.
Thanks,
All right.
Thanks, Liesel. Thanks, Hope. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
peeps.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.